Welcome to the Vetiver Vibes podcast. We're your hosts, Nikki, Rachel, and Rhonda, certified clinical aromatherapists coming to you from Ontario, Canada, and on the internet everywhere.
This episode is brought to you by Essentria, a leading online school for aromatherapy. Essentria is your go-to source for clinical aromatherapy certification programs that are recognized by NAHA and the Canadian Federation of Aromatherapists.
If you want to learn more about how to use aromatherapy with kids, check out their website, www.schoolofessentria.com. We're excited that you've given your time to be here with us, knowing you'll get the best essential oil scoop.
Hey, Rhonda Greenberry here. I'm interviewing Nikki Frazier today on aromatherapy and children.
Hey, everybody.
So today we're going to talk about our essential oils safe to use with kids.
And that's a question that we get asked a lot as an aromatherapist, as a school. When can we start using essential oils with kids? What ones can we use? All of that type of stuff. And it's never black and white, I want to say, to start with. And it really depends on the age of the children. And people use the word kids very differently to mean different ages. So what I want to do today is kind of dive into the different age brackets, because someone who is 1 month old baby is different than a 15-year-old teenager. But both of those are often referred to as kids and children because they are kids and children, but they need to be looked at differently when it comes to aromatherapy. And so the bottom line, aromatherapy is great to use with people of all ages. Essential oils, which is only a part of aromatherapy, is great to use with specific ages of children. So when we start looking at babies and infants, it's really important to be extra cautious. Teeny tiny humans are still growing and still developing, and it's important that we don't interact with any of that more than needed. We don't want to overstimulate their senses. They are still adjusting to this huge, bright, cold world. And many times babies, their biggest way of bonding and recognizing is through smell. So if we are masking mom, dad, parent, guardian scent, they can't find where that parent is, and they can't find that comfort that they're looking for either. This is where I often see diffusing through labor. As someone who works a lot with pregnant people, I do not recommend this because it masks that scent as soon as baby's born. It's the same thing when you bring baby home, you've got infant, you don't want to be masking anyone's scent. They want to smell you, especially if you're feeding, breastfeeding, chest feeding, because they are looking for that food source. This is where hydrosols or hydrolats, depending on which term you use, depending on where you are in the world, are phenomenal options to use and are very underutilized. And we need to do a podcast just about hydrosols because they are so amazing to use with this age bracket. All kids. For anyone who doesn't know what a hydrosol is, when essential oils are being extracted from the plant through steam distillation, you get water and oil. The essential oil gets siphoned off, and then that leaves us with the hydrosols in the container. These still contain the many therapeutic benefits of the essential oils, but in micro amounts, and it's the perfect amount to use with babies and children or elderly or anyone with compromised health conditions. It's just a gentle way of using an aromatherapy product. So we often hear where people are looking to help with sleep. My second especially didn't sleep. It was just a very straight fact, he only slept for 20-minute increments at a time for quite a few months. So I don't want people to think that essential oils are going to be this magic wand of my baby will finally sleep through the night. No, there are 1,000 different reasons why a baby's not sleeping through the night. You need to find what the root cause is. Essential oils isn't going to be the magic wand and cover that root cause. I want to make sure that's clear too. But you can add hydrosols to the diffuser and diffuse for 30 minutes while you're reading stories at night to help calm the mind and bring your kid just back to that nighttime routine. So hydrosols are fantastic to diffuse. They're fantastic to add to baths if a lot of babies will get different rashes for whatever reason. Mine were very prone to heat rashes. Both of my boys overheat themselves a lot. So I remember reading, have an extra layer from what an adult would wear in the house. That extra layer, they would instantly have heat rash. So they were often just in their big fluff bum diapers. And they were more than happy with that. But when they would overheat, I would just add a little bit of a lavender hydrosol to a bath, and that just helps soothe the skin. They're amazing. You can add it, even spraying on a diaper rash, anything like that. Hydrosols are going to be what my number one recommendation is for babies. And I mean, for all ages, it's really great too. The other thing to take into consideration is what are the pros and cons of the product you're thinking of using versus the essential oil? So when you're looking at an over-the-counter product that you want to purchase, what does it contain? And I've said this before, and I'll say this on many other episodes. I dive deep into research. It's my personality. And there are a lot of products that we just don't have in the house. One of those is petroleum. Anything that has petroleum in it, so a jelly product, without using names, there are a lot of really huge brands out there that are, eucalyptus jelly-based product for cold and flu season. And it says, rub them on baby's feet, all that type of stuff. We don't use any of that. The petroleum is just not worth the risk. And our family, with the high carcinogenic action that it can cause in that. So when I'm looking at that versus adding, having a 0.1% blend for either cough and cold or diaper rash to help protect the bum, anything like that, I'm going to use the essential oil because to me, there's less of a risk long-term and short-term, but mostly long-term for that product use.
So I find it really interesting that you're talking about like those petroleum based products because without using names also, I know like one of the most popular ones that I've read, the ingredients are actually chemicals that are extracted. They don't even use essential oils. So usually once a chemical is sort of diluted down and extracted, it might lose some of its benefits.
Oh yeah.
And so it's a lot less. So I think the one that I believe we're both talking about, it probably has menthol in it that gives it that like mintiness versus having an actual essential oil with a ton of other therapeutic sort of chemicals in it, right?
They just have a synthesized version of the oil of the plant, which doesn't give you the therapeutic benefits because there are no therapeutic benefits in it at that point.
Right. So. Yeah. And I think that's sort of like the disillusion, right? When we're inhaling something that sort of has that minty or refreshing smell, it's sort of like our, what do you call it? The placebo effect.
Yes.
We're just like, oh, we're feeling better because of the fresh air and stuff. But you're like, not really. I mean, the placebo effect works in the body. It's not illegitimate, but you're not getting the benefits from the product. You're getting it from your brain. Just not the same. No. So we try to give you both, I guess, in aromatherapy is what we're going for, right? Whether it's one or the other, we're going to try and give you both.
Yes.
I do have a question though, like about hydrosols, and this is really interesting. And so this is just a question to sort of educate our audience. When we're talking about hydrosols, you said that they're steam distilled and then they take the watery bit out of it. Can you add essential oils to water and just sort of create your own hydrosol if you can't access them?
So the short answer is no, you can't, because then water and oil don't mix. If we go back to, I don't know, my oldest is going into grade 4 and he hasn't learned it yet. So I'm going to say grade 5 science of adding oil and water. and then shaking it. You can still see the little bubbles all through the water, and then they separate. If anyone makes their own salad dressing, you've got oil and a vinegar type thing, and they separate. This is why you need to shake it before you add it to your salad. So water and oil do not mix. I have seen one aromatherapist who suggested adding oil to water, letting it sit for 2 days, and then pouring it through a coffee filter to help it take out the oil droplets. And then what's left is a DIY hydrosol. It's still not the same. So if anyone who has come across this, you may have taken out the oil droplets, and some of those therapeutic benefits may still be in the water, but it's still not the same as an actual hydrosol. So any of those room sprays that you're making with just water and oil, it's always separating and things like that.
Well, and they don't even last that long either, right? I mean,
No.
water is like so prone to bacteria and microbes that are kind of toxic. So we're sitting here spraying our bathrooms thinking that we're doing something lovely and just shaking it.
Yeah.
Really, after about 2 weeks, you're shaking it and spraying a nice, lovely scented microbes all over your bathroom.
Yeah.
So,
And that's where blending the hydrosols comes in handy. So I used to make a monster spray for my kids when they were small, and I had 2 different hydrosols that I mixed together to make our monster spray. And
what a great
they never
idea.
really did monsters, but it was just actually our time to set intention. So we would spray the room before bed, and we'd set our intentions, but then they just had this nice, lovely aroma that wasn't overpowering, and I just love spraying. All kids love spraying stuff.
Yeah, I mean, kids in general are sensory seekers, right? When they're little, as they're exploring the world anyways, right?
Yeah,
So just being able to get something wet or smelling it is probably exciting. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
so what would be in a monster spray then, just out of curiosity? Like, would you be spraying something that's like protective, or would you be spraying something that's like calming for your children because it's bedtime, or?
Oh, you could put absolutely anything under the sun in it, whatever you want. I'm trying to remember what we did. I think we did lavender and Roman chamomile off the top of my head, because those are calming right before bed, because this was part of our bedtime routine, and we would set our intention, uh, we would say what we were thankful for that day. And so it was just a nice time to calm down right before bedtime. But you can, if someone likes orange, you can do a sweet orange hydrosol and whatever it is that you want. So they are a little bit harder to find, especially in Canada. Not as many essential oil aromatherapy stores carry it, but there are definitely some. I know the aromatherapist who we've partnered with as a school, they carry some. I believe there's a couple companies out west that carry some.
Well, and I think part of the problem that some of the consumers have with carrying it is it's not a super stable product, right? Like it can deteriorate quick because of the watery nature of it. And I'm not sure, but I believe that they can sell that sort of byproduct to cosmetic companies and make more money than they can just selling the hydrosol sometimes, right? So,
Yes. And people just
it,
don't know about them enough, really. They're not something that's spoken of to promote it more and realize how amazing of an option it is to be using.
yeah, and I don't even think they're studied as much either.
Yeah,
Like just finding the science. You can probably meet a dozen aromatherapists who have some experience with it, but the science is not as common as we see with essential oils and carrier oils, right? So
exactly.
that's something that's still ever growing and expanding, right? So
Mhm.
so I do have a question then. So when we're looking at essential oils or even the hydrosols, what about things like eucalyptus and peppermint? I've seen some sort of debates on whether these are safe to use. And then you always get those social media people, right, who are like, oh, I've been doing this for a long time and I never had a reaction, and I like to call those the lucky ones because
Just because you didn't have a reaction doesn't mean everybody else won't have a reaction.
yeah,
I always
or you didn't
compare
have
that.
one yet.
Yes, I always compare that to, the old seatbelt safety rules of, my parents, who are one of 6 children. They were all piled into the one car with my grandparents. You've got 8 people in one car, and people are sitting on top of each other. People are on the ground. People are everywhere, and no one was wearing seatbelts, and they were never in an accident. So they were safe in their mind. Well, we all know that that's not, they were the lucky ones. They weren't in an accident to have any complications. So, as much as someone can be safe once, twice, three times, long term, you don't know what that safety or lack of safety is going to have on someone. And this is where we are going by Robert Tisseran's safety information. He's a leading expert when it comes to safety. His essential oil safety book is the best one to reference. And he really goes over the information with eucalyptus and peppermint. However, I want to make sure that people are also aware, people just think it's these two oils. However, it's the 1.8 cineol in eucalyptus that we're looking at. So there are other oils that also contain 1.8 cineol, such as rosemary, right? And there are other ones also. But peppermint and eucalyptus are the ones that we're really looking at. Peppermint with the menthol, eucalyptus with 1.8 cineol. Again, it comes to age, it comes to topical or aromatic application. So when we're looking at peppermint, children under 3, it's best to avoid altogether. So you don't want to diffuse and you don't want to use it topically under the age of 3. If you're between 3 and 6, you can diffuse it, or you can apply it topically up to a 0.5%. So, but again, between the ages of 3 and 6, you really want to be using about 1 to 2% dilution as a max. So you're not even using that high amount. You want to make sure that you are really keeping it at a 0.5 or under for ages of 3 to 6. After that, you can use it as normal dilution depending on the age. When it comes to eucalyptus, there are many different sorts of eucalyptus also. And this is where it's important to make sure, are you using eucalyptus radiata? Are you using eucalyptus globulus? Right? There are many different ones. So you need to make sure that you're looking at the botanical name to know which essential oil you are actually using and referring to the proper safety of that one. Now, for eucalyptus radiata and globulus, for children under the age of 3, it can be diffused and it can be used up to a 0.5% dilution. When you're looking at 3 to 6, again, it can still be diffused and you can use it up to a 1% dilution. The biggest thing is keeping it away from the face. So anything with menthol, anything with 1.8 cineol, you really want to keep it away from the face because this is what's going to trigger it. It's that strong aroma, you're getting the strong benefits, and it could actually trigger an asthma attack. It could trigger respiratory issues, and that's what we want to avoid. So if you have it, if it's cold and flu season and you've made a balm for a chest rub, anything to help with the lungs, for younger kids, I typically put it on the back so that it avoids the face. It's not wafting right into the face, but our lungs you can access them through your back still. You can still get a lot of that support when applying a product to the back. For younger children, applying it to their feet. I don't typically recommend applying to feet. However, kids' bodies are very tiny also. So putting something on the feet and then applying socks over it though, because children also play with their feet and then put hands in mouth and all that type of stuff. So you want to make sure that you're also applying, depending on the age, areas that they are not going to be rubbing and then rubbing their eyes, putting into their mouth, things like that. This is why I really recommend the back, because they aren't really getting their hands on their back. So it can be used safely when used properly.
So I find it really interesting that you're saying read the botanical name, and especially when we're looking at eucalyptus, what's really interesting is there's actually more than one kind of peppermint too.
Yes.
I think there's I think it's called Japanese peppermint, and or like a corn mint. Do you think that has the same risk?
No, because they each have their own chemical constituents in them. And this is where it's important to look at that. Corn peppermint, and I've also actually heard some refer to certain eucalyptus as that too. They are very, very different. And that is where the risk lies. And that's where it's important to know what is actually in the oils. That's why looking at the botanical names, okay, I know that eucalyptus globulus and eucalyptus radiata have 1.8 cineol. I know rosemary has 1.8 cineol. So those are the oils I'm going to be cautious with. I know peppermint has menthol.
Okay. Yeah, and that's really interesting too, because I know if you're sort of the uneducated consumer, or you're still new and experimenting where to get your essential oils, you might stumble upon, those bigger stores like the Walmarts, let's say. Nothing against Walmart, but they do carry essential oils that maybe aromatherapist won't buy. And the peppermint that you're going to find in there is probably a corn mint.
Yes.
And you won't find corn mint or Japanese peppermint used as commonly in aromatherapy as you will regular peppermint, right? So sometimes sort of distinguishing those things is really important. So the botanical name is super important. But getting back a little bit to like the ages, so I love that you use the monster spray. But what would you say, like, okay, so my children are like 6 years old and they're going to school, can I just like lather them up in essential oils and send them out the door and they can have a great day at school smelling lovely?
So this is where, again, we don't want to overuse essential oils, especially with kids. You don't want to use them, you don't want to overuse them as an adult, but kids, their skin is still more sensitive. They can easily react more to certain products. So unless you really have a reason to be using essential oils, don't use them. There's no reason to be slathering your child with essential oils every day. Oh, I have this immune boosting blend. I'm going to slather them in it every single day before they go to school. No, because eventually you could, if you're using the same oil over and over and over again, you could become sensitized to it if you aren't using them properly diluted. And it's just not needed, right? You're not going to take a product every single day unless you actually need it. Now, if you feel high cold and flu season times, let's say, you want to do a little bit of a preventative, sure. But I wouldn't necessarily do it right before school, because then again, you're getting into aromas around other people, that type of thing. Some places are very touchy with that. I would instead diffuse after school. If you're looking for a study blend, you know, 6-year-olds wouldn't have to study, but you are starting to learn your letters more, reading. And I know my youngest is currently 7. And this past school year, he didn't want to read. He didn't want to do his quote unquote homework, which was literally just reading one teeny tiny book a night. And so sometimes it is diffusing something to help with transition and to help with bringing the mind back down, the body back down, grounding themselves after a long day of overstimulation at school, and to be able to focus on, doing that reading or learning your letters or numbers or whatever it is that they need to do. That would be my better recommendation. Now, start a school year, cold and flu, if you add, if you have a roller bottle that's safely diluted to, as a 6-year-old, you can dilute that to a 1% and just apply it down their spine a little bit. I always say down the spine because it helps activate the nervous system, and that can help keep their body working how it's supposed to, so that the body can keep its immune system up. Now, again, as I said, this would be short amount of time, maybe the first week of school when everyone starts to get reintroduced to each other and starts sharing germs again. And then high cold and flu season when there's a change of weather and people are more at risk of getting sick. Applying it for a week, absolutely. Every day, not recommended.
Yeah, and one of the things that I used to love to do, I used to make little aroma inhalers for my kids
Mhm.
so that it would kind of clear up some of that congestion, and then it wasn't exposing other children to some of the risks associated with them being exposed to essential oils without having their health history, right? Or even a teacher, like, who's
Mhm.
to say that someone's not allergic to this, or they don't have health issues that we know of, like epilepsy, for
Yeah.
example, right? I could be putting together a lovely blend to help them with studying, and then it puts their friend at risk.
And that is where I often see right before the school year starts, as someone who worked in the school system for 15 years, I'm going to start diffusing essential oils in my classroom. I see this a lot. What essential oils can I diffuse in my classroom? And that's that's a can of worms for many reasons. I won't dive too much into. Biggest answer is no, don't diffuse essential oils in your classroom, because like you said, you don't know what everyone's health history is. And that's very, very important. You don't have the consent from all the parents. You don't know everyone's health history. So you should not be doing that is typically the bottom line when it comes to diffusing in classrooms or open space or anything like that. And that's where those personal inhalers are absolutely the best thing to be using, because you can just make your blend, tuck it into your kid's pocket. It's the size of a chapstick, and they can just pull it out at any point, take a smell, and they can clear that congestion, or they can focus, or it can bring them back to a happy memory if they're having a rough time at school or something like that. It's there's so many different possibilities that can be used with those personal inhalers, and a lot safer to use also, because you just have that small amount using it aromatically, which is always the safest way to use, especially with children.
What about aroma jewelry
Yes.
for kids?
And depending on the school, I know some schools have strict rules around no necklaces. So if you have that rule in your school, then you wouldn't be able to wear a necklace. If you have, bracelets, earrings, anything like that, it's an excellent option to apply the oils in the morning before you go off to school. And then they have something to inhale through the day as that reminder, as that pick me up, as that focus, as that, whatever it is that they're using that blend for that day.
Yeah, you could really just teach your kids to sort of put their wrist with their lovely bracelet up and
Yep.
kind of bring things where it should be.
Absolutely. And if there's a specific aroma that reminds them of home, I'm thinking like the younger kids, if they are having a hard time getting into school, separation anxiety, anything like that, having a nice calming blend that you're using at home and then putting that on the aromatherapy bracelet is a great option to allow them to tap into the emotional aspect of it, and it reminds them of that security aroma that you smell at home is with them at school.
So what about
So
if we have like big kids, right? So like I have a child who's like 14 now. He's the size of my husband, but he's been pretty big. He's been like, and I'm only 5'3". When he was my height, I think he was in grade 5. So like he's big, like an
mhm.
adult at 10, 11, 12, right? Can we use adult dilutions of essential oils because kids are bigger?
So again, when we're looking at dilution, we really want to look at the age, not necessarily the size. Because yes, they are bigger, but their bodies are still a child's body. Their skin is still a child's skin. Their organs are still children's organs. Their blood circulation, like all of that. Part of it is, yes, they are bigger, so they have more space that they could actually apply oils to, a bigger surface area, but you still want to keep it in the same dilution because they're still going to be reacting as that age that they actually are. Actually, we have friends where my husband just came back from a play date with some of his friends, and his daughter's 9, and she's actually taller than me. As someone who's 5 foot nothing, she's already 5'3" at the age of 9, but she's still a 9-year-old. And this is important to remember. Just because someone's bigger doesn't change their age and doesn't change the safety that we need to take into consideration. So, when we're looking at 6 to 16-year-olds, which is one of the groups when we're looking at dilution, you can dilute 1.5 up to 3%. However, a 6-year-old and a 16-year-old are also very different. So this is where keeping it at that 1.5% is very much recommended. And as a 16-year-old, you could go up to that 3% on a specific situation. Still keeping it at a 2% though, because there's no reason to ever use the max really, unless it's like a specific condition. But a 2% for a 14, 15-year-old would be okay to use. A 3% on a 6-year-old, I find would be strong. And just because when you look at we have a specific dilution chart by age that we'll share in the show notes, and you'll be able to see, the minimum and the maximum. However, I just want to stress too that there is no actual minimum. The minimum is 0. You don't have to use the oil, right? This is where the hydrosol is a great option, even for a 14-year-old, right? Having a spray that they can spray themselves. A lot of I'll say girls mostly want to start wearing perfume. This is where having a hydrosol spray as like that body spray would be an ideal situation for this. You have a 14-year-old or a 12-year-old who wants to start wearing perfume, do a hydrosol as a body spray. So looking at the proper dilution is really by age, not by size. Once you get to 16, you are considered quote unquote an adult, where your body has developed enough to be as close, everything has developed how it should be, hopefully. And so there you can start using the 2 to 5% dilution, which is recommended for a healthy adult. But again, you don't want to be starting at 5%. The 2% is more than enough than what you need for most things.
So we see this argument a lot because we're a school, right? So we're educating people, and there's a little bit of a misconception about the therapeutic benefits go up with higher concentrations. So to give you an example, so COVID came through my house, and if I was of the mindset that I needed more essential oils, I may diffuse more, or I may apply more topically, because I'm like, oh, we're sicker with COVID now, right? But this is like, it's kind of, can you talk about that a little bit? Like, that's a bit of a sort of skewed sense of how things work.
Yes. And especially with kids, I am stressing, and I cannot stress it enough, less is always more. You always, always, always want to use the least amount of oils as possible, because they are young and still developing and so much more sensitive to everything. I seriously can't stress that enough. But this is where apply it more often through the day. And this is also where it depends on each essential oil. But if you're making, just a normal, I'll say a focus blend, let's say, so we've got some peppermint, we've got some lime, we've got some rosemary in there, nice focus blend. And I'll go high school age for exam time coming up. So you've got a 15-year-old getting ready to write their exams, and they're doing long study sessions. If they wanted to have a personal roller bottle that they're applying on the wrist to be able to smell, apply it often through the day. Just do a little swipe every couple of hours. That is going to actually have more benefits than having a higher percent and using it once. Because at that point, if you have a higher percent, you're getting into the safety consideration of sensitizing and all kinds of other issues, where keeping it low, reapply through the day, the body has that time to start breaking down the therapeutic benefit, the chemical constituents in it, and getting the benefits on that cellular level.
So what about, like, when we look at things like COVID, for example, my family, like, we lost our sense of smell a few days. So sometimes when you're diffusing these things, you're like, well, I don't feel like I'm benefiting because I can't smell it.
Nose blind is a big thing, especially when you're diffusing. A lot of times people will start their diffuser and then they can smell it. And then after 5 minutes, they stop smelling it. And that's just going nose blind. And you're still getting the therapeutic benefits. You just can't smell them. So adding more essential oil is not going to do anything. And it's just going to bring you out of that safe zone and potentially cause more issues down the line, especially over long-term use. It's really important to stay within that safe zone, even if you aren't smelling it. And actually, a lot of people, like you said, for different health concerns, different viruses can knock out our sense of smell because of the inflammation. There's also a lot of other health concerns that aren't necessarily virus, but Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, there's a few other diseases out there, health concerns that can cause a sense of smell to disappear. And you can still use the essential oils even if you don't have that loss of smell. Absolutely. The other thing to keep in mind is also that certain essential oils need to just be avoided altogether with kids for different reasons. Wintergreen and birch are two of the biggest ones that are often talked about that really need to be avoided with kids, especially because they have a long list of safety considerations in general to use. And a lot of that is due to how the body processes the chemical constituents in it. It goes through a different process than a lot of the other oils. They're just a lot harder on the body. We also want to avoid any kind of hot oil. Oregano is a big hot oil that we want to avoid because it can cause extra issues. So there's a lot of oils that you'll see to avoid under 2, a few oils that you might see to avoid under 5 or 6. This is where you need to follow that safety recommendation so that we don't overstimulate the body and we don't cause any other issues. And so if anyone hasn't seen, we do have awesome safety labels. Might be a little hard to see, but our quick guide safety labels actually will tell you children, no known concerns. So for bergamot, there's no known concerns. Eucalyptus for children, it says do not apply near faces of infants or young children. Constituents 1.8 cineol, and then it also says a couple others on the product safety label that we've created ourselves. So these are something that we'll attach it in the show notes that you can learn more about. But these are great, just quick reference guides to see, hey, can I use this with my kid? My 5-year-old, is this a safe oil to use? This is a great way to double check that. And you can find a few of these ones free. And then we do also have, if you want to get our full 3-bundle set, you can get that too.
What about carrier oils? Like, can we just use carrier oils? Do we always have to add an essential oil or a hydrosol?
No. And this is where, when I talked about earlier, I started mentioning hydrosols and then I never got back to the carrier oils. Using just a carrier oil is often the best thing for certain conditions. So especially when you're looking at babies, infants, oftentimes a carrier oil will be more than enough to use when you're looking at a diaper rash, if you're looking at a heat rash, if you're looking at any kind of skin dermatitis issues that are happening. Having a jojoba oil or an avocado oil, or depending on what you're looking to target, something that has a lot of high fat, something that each carrier oil has their own benefits, also their own chemistry behind them, vitamins and all kinds of things. So you really want to look at what that is. Fractionated coconut oil or a virgin cold pressed coconut oil is oftentimes going to be fantastic. I often just used virgin cold pressed coconut oil as for my kids with any kind of diaper rash. Now we use cloth diapers. So even if we wanted to use over the counter products, we couldn't use most things that contain zinc because it would build up in the cloth diapers. But we also didn't get a lot of issues because we use cloth diapers. But just using the coconut oil, especially when they were teething and that high acid time in their output often causes diaper rash, having that coconut oil just to apply that small barrier is more than enough. And it has that antifungal properties, it's nourishing to the skin. So carrier oils are going to be fantastic. You doing massages with your toddlers is really great for bonding. Baby massage, really great for bonding. Just using an olive oil, using a jojoba oil. If you don't have a nut allergy, you could use an almond oil. They all have their own amazing benefits for the skin. So a lot of times we don't need to add essential oils when we're using topically, especially for the younger ones.
Yeah, and I always say carrier oils also have their own therapeutic benefits, right? I mean, we can look at things like calendula and St. John's wort and arnica. I mean, arnica is like famous for muscle pains and stuff. You don't need to add an essential oil to it to have therapeutic benefits. And this is where that people I think are misled, right? Because when they think about aromatherapy, they still default to essential oils. Well, we're not just studying essential oils. We're also working with hydrosols
Yeah.
and carrier oils and addressing issues. It's not a one-stop shop, right? We're not like, oh, what do we add the essential oil to now? It's not like that. Sometimes we don't even use the essential oil at all.
And that's where like growing pains, a lot of kids when they have big growth spurts and are going through growing pains, that arnica and calendula infused oils and just massaging it over the legs is going to be more than enough to help ease any of that. You're increasing the circulation through the massage, and they have that analgesic nice properties to really help with any of that pain management.
I mean, in some cases, it might even be more effective because then the body's not trying to filter out the added in essential oils and what to do with them, right?
Yeah.
When we think about it, these are small, young bodies, right? And when we just keep adding more things to our body, it's not probably the best approach, I would say. I would say less is more, like we say, right?
I was just going to say that less is more. We don't need to inundate the body with more products than are needed. Absolutely. And again, this is, going back to that risk benefit analysis that I spoke to at the very beginning of even between, do I add essential oils or not? Risk benefit. Do I really need to add the essential oils? No, great. I'll just use a carrier oil, a vegetable or nut or seed or whatever base oil, or I'll just use a hydrosol. You've got three fantastic options that all have their own benefits.
Yes, and when we're talking about the scent-free world and scent considerations when we're sending kids to school, using a carrier oil might actually be better because there's not really an aroma that comes off of carrier oils like there is with essential oils because they're not volatile.
Yes,
So there's really
absolutely.
a reduced risk for, scented areas, scent-free areas.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that you want to add or let us know, our audience know, before we wrap this up?
Yeah. So I mean, I barely skim the surface when it comes to oils and children. There's so much out there. And there's so much conflicting information that it's hard to know what's accurate, what's not accurate. The biggest thing I remember when I very first started looking into essential oils, I saw a lot of stuff for concentration. I used to work with a lot of children who were diagnosed with ADHD, ODD, anything like that. And I remember seeing blends out there and I wasn't using aromatherapy with my students or anything like that, but just looking at stuff to help provide information for the parents. I would see blends where it was like 30% essential oil, 40%, 50%. I would see 100 drops in a 10 milliliter roller bottle and then top it with a fractionated coconut oil. Like I was just appalled at the information that I would find out there on the internet. And so it can be hard to sift through what is safe, what isn't safe, what to follow. So we have created a aromatherapy and children's mini course that helps dive a little bit deeper into that. So as much as we, skim the surface in this discussion, if you really want to dive deeper, the aromatherapy and children's mini course goes live at the end of September 2022. And you can learn more about that at www.schoolofessentria.com. And in that course, I really go over a lot more in depth as to oils to avoid. I provide a list. Now, it's not a full list because there are hundreds of essential oils out there, but the most popular oils that we often see, which to avoid. And then I go over 15 essential oils that are most commonly recommended for kids. I go over hydrosols. I go over 6 different carrier oils that are really, really great to use with kids. And then I also include 24 different recipes, formulas to use. And this is great for, babies through teen years. I go over the different proper safe dilution. There's so much information in this mini course that it's really going to help you. The goal is to really help you feel confident and empowered as you're using essential oils with your children or hydrosols or carrier oils to expand your knowledge of products that you can use with your kids, and it's a small investment. It'll be, knowing myself, it'll be closer to an hour and a half when it's presented live, plus questions. But it's a great way to help you feel more confident with using aromatherapy with your children.
Great, that sounds amazing. And that's kind of the challenge when you get us oily interested people, we kind of go off on a tangent, talk about things.
Yes. And especially when it comes to safety information, because that is my biggest thing. Rhonda, Rachel, and I, we've often talked about that I'm the strictest person when it comes to safety. And it's, when we're recommending something, especially for children, and then when for the mini course of aromatherapy and pregnancy, these are two categories of aromatherapy that really, really need to follow safety considerations because the fetus or the newborn baby or the child is at such a vulnerable state that we need to make sure that we keep them safe.
That's awesome. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you for tuning in to Vetiver Vibes, the Essential Oil Scoop. I'm Rhonda Greenberry with Nikki Frazier, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
This episode was brought to you by Essentria, a leading online aromatherapy school. You can join the free Introduction to Essential Oil course at www.schoolofessentria.com.
If you love this episode or you got a lot of value out of it, please make sure you share it with someone in your community who you think will enjoy it too. If you haven't already subscribed or reviewed the show yet, please go over to your preferred streaming platform and hit subscribe, then leave a review. This is the best way to help support us, and we appreciate it. Email us with a screenshot of your review, and you will be entered into our monthly draw for a free mini course.
This podcast is for information purposes only. We are certified clinical aromatherapists and holistic health professionals. If you have a medication concern, please refer to your health team. Everyone's health is unique to themselves, so the topics and suggestions stated may or may not apply to you directly.